Exactly.
Thank you all for being here. So I thought I'd start off first with just questions about the U.S. election. No, I'm joking. Um, so marketing and advertising has changed drastically in the last 5, 10 years, but it seems like that's only accelerating more recently. So what do you see as some of the biggest changes in advertising that have come about in the last, let's say, year or so? We'll start
Directed
you
to
with
me?
Tom. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry, we'll
great.
go down the line.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tom. Good morning, everyone. What I think is the biggest change is advertising used to be more of a one-way street than it is today. People are so empowered with all the tools to get information in their pocket. Branding is now two-way street, as well as the rest of advertising. The old days, it used to be repeat a message over and over and over again, sort of brainwash people. They would go out and buy a product. Now brands have to be a lot more innovative and engaging and build based on what a consumer needs as opposed to what the brand needs.
Gary.
Yeah, I agree with Tom's point in terms of the nature of creativity and how fast that's evolving. I'm sure we'll get into talking about that to some degree too. And then the other, which you see when you look at an audiences like this, is just how fast people are moving to mobile and how much time people are spending with their phones. So that from a media standpoint, that's a pretty fundamental shift as well.
Sure, the form factor. Maurice.
I agree. We have been always looking for what we call the holy grail, which is the feedback. When you send a message, you want to know how people have reacted. Today we can. Today we can measure. We can know how people have reacted. On top of this, we can also fine-tune how to target the people. But there is one thing which has not changed, which is creativity. It is all about the idea. And this is something which is probably the most important aspect in advertising, this emotional quotient, the fact that you can create something which suddenly will bring the brand together with the consumer. We will change the habits, the behavior of a consumer, simply because someone had the right idea and it has been conveyed with the right message, through the right channel, in the right context. And this is today something that you can do at a much better degree than what we have been doing for years.
And why is it more easy to do now?
Simply because of data. Today we can measure almost everything, but we should be cautious because we should not let algorithm and measurement leading the way. This is something for which we should always keep an ability to judge and an ability to make your own judgment, because you have to make sure that you are building the brand and you are not only conveying a message. And a brand has a lot of values, a brand has its own characteristic, and everyone is not necessarily good for that brand. So the way you are selecting the people, the way you are selecting your target is essential. So data is something which has an enormous importance nowadays.
Gary mentioned earlier mobile and the fact that people are spending so much time on their phones. Does the small screen within mobile and the small amount of time that people spend on each individual piece of content, does that put an increased burden on creativity in order to get your message across?
Yeah, I think it does. I think to Maurice's point, I think fundamentally you still have to get to the core of what the story is, and I think in lots of ways marketing is as much back to its roots as it's ever been in terms of the role of storytelling and the role of kind of the fundamental message. But you're seeing in the use on phones, there's a couple of things that are adapting. One is the number of executions that you build, how fast you need to build them, revise them. That has sped up to a large degree. I think the role that, and you see this in various ways, the roles of subtitles with sound off, how to get people's attention in the first 3 seconds of a piece of creative. And also, I think, and people often skip over this, and related a little bit to Maurice's point about targeting, is about data, is the importance of the target. And your ability to target to a much narrower audience now is a key part of how you think about your campaign. And I have found, as I talk to advertisers or talk to other marketers, people very much jump right to the creative, which is fundamental. But very much paired to that is who you're talking to.
Yeah, I think mobile is definitely marrying the passion and the science of advertising. And your question, I think, was around the small size of the screen, the form factor. I think that other dimension that you get from mobile is time and place. So you know more about what the audience member is doing in that moment in time, and that can inform dynamically the message that you're giving, right? So I think there's an added benefit to mobile that we're not really seeing in a lot of other traditional platforms that's driving a lot more growth. But that marrying of the passion and the science is really a huge opportunity for marketers.
Yeah. In the last couple of years, we've seen an explosion of video on mobile. Facebook is pushing it. Many other social networks are. How does the rise of video on these mediums change advertising? Is it more like television now? Is this completely different and needs to be treated that way? What does video mean to you guys?
I think that video is what consumers are electing to do. They're consuming more video, so therefore they want more. It's an opportunity for the brand marketer to create a new type of storytelling. So I don't know if it's a direct correlation to broadcast TV models. I think they're doing it in a different place, on the go. They're looking to be entertained sometimes, they're looking to be informed at other times, and it's knowing which one they want and having the right creative asset to deliver, I think, is the opportunity.
Yeah. In fact, I hear from advertisers often that simply taking a TV commercial and putting it on Facebook or any other mobile platform doesn't work. So Maurice, I mean, for what you do, how are you negotiating this rise in video and the types of advertising that you use it for?
First of all, video is extremely important simply because we are in a world and a civilization of image. And people want to see the image. And an image tells much more than any speech, any word. So it's very important to have the image. And in the generation of the kids, video are something which are extremely important. You cannot use TV videos or cinema videos and put them on mobile and consider that you have done a proper job. Because on mobile, not only mobile or on a platform or whatever kind of tools today, you have to adapt the kind of message that you are sending to the final device. If you're on a big screen, you can use fantastic video. If you are on small screens, you have to adapt the message and the way you are communicating, the language. You have to change everything. That's the reason why it's the development of content which is today prevailing compared to the classic advertising messages that you are sending through video on mobile phone. And by the way, if we have seen a lot of ad blockers developing and stopping messages, it's simply because videos were not adapted. They are becoming intrusive. They are disturbing because they are coming at any time. And it's very important to do not alienate the relationship with the consumer. And if you are coming at a time where it's not wanted, in that case, you annoy the consumer and you do a very bad job. Not only it's costing to the advertiser, but on top of that, you are alienating the goodwill of a consumer. So in this world, you have to be extremely cautious in the way you are using the information and how you are carrying the message. That's the reason having access to the data is essential. It's something which is extremely important, and avoiding also to being intrusive in the privacy of the people. So it's very subtle. That's the reason why algorithms are not always addressing the issues as they should.
Do you find, and I asked this to all three of you, that users are more accepting of their data being central to how targeting is done? Are people, what direction do you see people going? To being more concerned about it or more allowing of it?
I think people look for universality in that answer. I think what we're finding is, and I think a little bit to Maurice's point, the more relevant you can make a piece of content to someone in whatever moment they're in, I think is vital to the relationship you have. And earlier, certainly in the television model and some degree in the radio model, there was a sense of supply-driven marketing where you're going to push a campaign, you're going to push a piece of content out. I think we're much more in a demand-based media economy now, where people are pulling content and choosing the content they want to have. And so if you're finding someone, particularly in a shopping experience, where you're showing them a piece of content, or you're showing them a product that's relevant to their experience, you find that satisfaction actually goes up. And the other thing that I think is quite interesting in terms of this point about universality, it's very different in markets. Markets like Indonesia, for example, or India, the interest in advertising, the interest in seeing ads in your digital experience, whether it be Facebook or other, is actually quite high. Because they have not seen as much commercial content. They're not necessarily broadly experiencing as much television, for example, as some other markets. So there's differences by market. There's differences by where people are, even an individual, like a given individual, on where they are on a purchase need or a purchase interest or a content interest based upon their own experience.
Tom, I wanted to ask you about the increasing role that publishers play as advertisers. You're seeing more and more content marketing done by publishers, playing the role almost of an ad agency or some creative role. How has that affected what you guys do?
It's become a big part of our business, frankly. And again, consumers and advertisers, they don't want to have a wall separating them. They want to engage, and they can engage in almost every medium now. At Forbes, we realized, again, if you can provide the relevant information and serve an audience, whether that comes from an editor or an advertiser, as long as you're both committing to the same goals and the purpose. So the business of advertising is shifting a little bit from that sell first, build customers, and maybe serve them into this service mentality that leads to sales. And I think that's what we're seeing on our side. So we are not just helping connect brands with audiences, but actually helping some of them create the content. And I think all the worlds of social media, corporate communications, public relations, and advertising seem to be merging. And I think until the brands and the industry figures out who's doing what, we're trying to help serve the brands and provide an alternate way of connecting.
Yeah. And Maurice, how has that affected your business at all, having more publishers act almost as an ad agency?
This has always happened. If you go back in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, you always had some part of the advertising which was done by a publisher. It was advertorials. But if an advertiser wants to control the brand today, not only he needs to control completely the whole chain of production of the message, but also where it is conveyed and through which channels. So the role of the advertising agency is growing. It is more complicated. And we play today another role, which is to help the client to transform themselves and to transform their marketing. And today, we build platforms, we build e-commerce platforms, we build a website, and obviously we do it with the feeling of the brand, what the brand has to say to the consumer, in order that there is consistency from A to Z. And this consistency can be done only if you control completely the product and if you control the creativity from A to Z. But you can have other choices, and there is clients who prefer to split and to use many partners in order to get some advantages by working precisely with one partner on some precise aspect. But the best option is always to have everything done through one single hand in order that the concept of the brand is protected from A to Z.
Mm-hmm. And that is the role of the ad agency.
And the ad agency is changing quite dramatically. The classic old ad agency, the Mad Men, is something which belongs a little bit to the past, only a little bit. The bad behavior is clearly to the past.
Yeah.
And for the rest, everything which has to do with the creativity, it's belonging to today. But on top of that, you have to add the technology. And you have to bring together what we call the alchemy of technology and creativity. The fact that you have very solid algorithm, very strong platforms, and marketing platforms which help you distribute the message, and on top of that, that you keep this touch, this human touch that can be brought only through human creativity. And this is essential. And this is what the agency is doing. So the way we are operating today has very little to do with what we were doing a few years ago. And the most important thing that we have done recently, if you look at Publicis Group, is to demolish the silos. We have been fortunate by building silos which have created expertise and which has built very strong operation in media, in creative, in digital, etc. And today we are demolishing the silos in order to bring everyone together and to deliver the power of all our assets to one client. And this is something that you can do only if people are working together.
Yep.
There's a lot of concern I hear from publishers and others in the media about the amount that Google and Facebook really dominates digital advertising. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but it's a huge percentage of all digital advertising is spent on those two sites alone. What does that mean for the future of media, and will it continue to increase only with those two companies, or is there diversification coming with digital advertising? I asked this to all three of you. I think it affects all of your businesses.
I'm sure Gary has a very specific answer to that. I would just say, there's a reason they're collecting so much of the ad pie, right? They're doing a great service for their consumers, therefore that they're generating it. I will say you can see waves throughout the history of advertising, though, where there's been big players who have dominated the ad market. And I think it comes back to what the consumer wants and needs. And I think whether it's Google and Facebook or some of the new media properties, a lot of companies are finding out what's good for a consumer, but it's hard for them to create that gravitas or that importance about what they're doing. I think there's a room then for traditional publishers who have built that gravitas and are also coming to some level of scale to help marketers. So I think there's still room for both.
Look, the global ad business is about an $800 billion industry, and so you kind of have to look at it in terms of the total advertising business. Still, in terms of where media dollars go, media dollars are not close to matching where people are spending their time today. And as that evolves, both Facebook and then Google, we made a move very early in terms of how people shifted their time to mobile to make a bet to go to mobile. But we're 4 or 5 years into that. And I think the evolution of how people are using media and what's going on with particularly this kind of demand-based consumer experiences is changing very, very fast. I want to make one point to what Maurice said earlier, which is very related to this, is for all this, I think what's really necessary for everybody to do is to be fast. And you have to put yourself in a position, whether it be creativity, media plans, targeting and understanding your consumer, to be able to execute and understand fast. Integration is a great way to do that in terms of working with agencies, working with partners. But if you're not doing that, you're not going to adapt. And I think one of the things that we've been able to do as Facebook and Google has done is just adapt very fast.
Yeah.
Speed is of the essence for everyone today. So it's not something which is limited to Facebook or to Google. Every player has to move extremely fast. And clearly, the fact that Facebook and Google are today dominant players is something which is pushing a lot of people to invent new forms of communication and to find new ways in order to find their own pattern for the future and how to exist alongside this behemoth. And the only way for them to exist is to be more creative or more targeted and to find ways for their own survival. And I'm sure that with ideas, the old publishers are becoming very relevant in nowadays. And we see a lot of renaissance of publishers. And you see the same kind of solution with the TV, where there is a lot of TV channels. We have reinvented themselves, and they have found new approaches in order to better target and to offer to the audience a product which is tailored to them. So I don't believe that there will be a monopoly of or a duopoly with Google and Facebook, and everything will be dominated. We see that there is a lot of initiative in a lot of parts of the world, and I'm confident that there will be new solutions tomorrow which will create some challenges to Facebook and Google, and that will be good for everyone.
I'm sure the media companies especially would love that to be the case. We're slightly over now, so thank you all so much for talking about this, and
Thanks, Tom.
to be continued.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Thank you.